right, your next comic says he's America's funniest rabbi. So give it up now for Bob Alper.
I'm an unusual comedian. This whole thing about being a rabbi and a stand-up comic came together. I was changing planes in Philadelphia. I live in Vermont. I was changing planes in Philadelphia on the way to a show in LA. And a woman walked by me, did a double take. She said, "You're Rabbi Alper, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You probably don't remember me." And I didn't. She said, "But I was a kid in your congregation here in Philadelphia during the 80s. And I used to watch the way you would teach and lead services and counsel and preach. And so I decided to become a rabbi anyway." Now, I may be making history. I may be the oldest comedian ever to perform on this hallowed stage. It's certainly one of the oldest. I'm 78 years old. Thank you. It's not that bad. Harrison Ford is 81. He's making another movie. It's going to be called Indiana Jones and the Enlarged Prostate. Well, they're going to test market that. If that doesn't work, that title doesn't work, the backup title is Indiana Jones and the Reverse Mortgage. And then he's got another project. Remember the Fugitive, the movie The Fugitive? In this newest episode, Dr. Richard Kimball flees assisted living. So my wife and I have been married for 54 years. Back in 1969, my wife didn't have the choices women have today. Today, women can take their husband's name, keep their maiden names, they can hyphenate. Back then, my wife did the traditional thing. She took my name. Her name used to be Sherry Zink, and now it's Bob Zink. Our lives are totally in sync. For example, at the same time I got hearing aids, she stopped mumbling. She's a psychotherapist. She was telling me one of her colleagues told her that she was working with a couple around the issue of communication in their marriage. At a certain point, she said to the wife, "Well, let me ask you, how do you express when you want to make love?" The woman said, "Well, I say, 'Sweetheart, I'm going upstairs now. I'm going to take a long, hot shower.'" Her husband said, "That's what you've been telling me? All these years I thought you meant I shouldn't run the dishwasher." And we have medical issues. My wife had to have a colonoscopy. It's a routine thing. I was in the waiting room of the hospital. There was one other man who was watching TV, kind of blaring. I was trying to read. The nurse walked in. She said, "Mr. Albert?" I said, "Well, it's Alper." She said, "Well, your wife is all set. Let me take you to her room." We got there. She said, "Would you like me to see if she's ready?" I said, "Thank you. We've been married for 54 years. So I walked into the room, and there was Mrs. Albert. She was not ready. Not happy. So I had to have what's called a cystoscopy. They wanted to look at my bladder. They found it was lovely, absolutely beautiful. But to do that, I'm going to use a couple terms that no other comic has ever used in all of comedy. Cystoscopy, I use that, and urethra, okay? Because to look at your bladder, they take a tube and they put it in your urethra, and at the end of the tube, there's a light and a camera on a little tiny iPhone 12. So waiting, and the anesthesiologist walked in with a really good-looking young woman. He says to me, "This is Dr. Richmond. She's a resident, and she'd like to observe the procedure." Well, I thought, great, it's not going to be humiliating enough. Let's add this piece. But I said, fine. I said to her, "So, what's your specialty?" She said, "Podiatry." The thing is, when I woke up, all of my toenails had been trimmed. And the next day, she friended me on Facebook. I can't figure that out. So, anyway, we have two children. We have an adorable 51-year-old. Cutie patootie 47-year-old. Both still in the gifted program. And we have little kids in our family. My nephew has a pair of 11-year-old twins. He's always saying to them, "Remember, one of you was unplanned." And my niece has a 4-year-old grandson. We were at a restaurant. He had to go to the bathroom, so I took him. He went into the stall. I was up there by the sink waiting. And apparently they had one of these electric toilets with a blinking red light. Because at a certain point I heard him say, "You know, Uncle Bob, these things take your picture." So I mentioned we lived in Vermont, moved up there in 1990. First thing I did there was to join the AJCO. That's the Association of Jewish Chainsaw Owners. And we really love living up there. One of the things you can do is you can ski during the weekdays when there's no one around. But even if you're alone, which I am, you have to pair up on the lift. So I skied up one time. I said, "Single, single." And I heard a voice behind me say, "Ever wonder why?" I do a lot of traveling. Usually I fly out of Albany, New York. It's an hour and a half from my house. But right near our house, 25 minutes away, is a little tiny airport, Rutland, Vermont. They have one 8-passenger plane, goes in and out of Boston 3 times a day. And I'm there enough so that the TSA people know me. Last winter, one of the guys going through my suitcase, he looked at me and said, "You know, Bob, it's pretty chilly out. You should have packed your gray V-neck sweater." I was sitting there, and an announcement saying, it said, "Flight 64 is ready for departure. We'll now be boarding Bob." And I was the only passenger. I got on the plane and put on my seatbelt. The pilot turns around and says, "So, where do you want to go?" And I was on a regular airline. Before we took off, the pilot got on. He said, "We have very special guests on board today. Harry and Edna Baxter are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. They're sitting in seats 3B and 27D. Thank you very, very much.